Some of you worked ahead and maybe put the answers there already. I'm going to do a little bit more work than you might have on your paper. So if I do a couple extra things, you can just stick them in there. What I'm going to do is I'm going to write in symbols, in function notation symbols, and then I'm going to put the final answer as well. And I'm going to do this, I'm going to stay organized as I can so that you could use this method for any equation. Right now these equations are pretty easy, but they will get harder, so that's why I want to give you this method that helps stay organized. So when I read, if we're going to take f of x equals x, we're going to do a vertical stretch factor of 2 followed by a translation 1 unit up. When I see the word followed by, that's going to kind of separate the first step with the second step. And when I'm doing this, I'm going to do my first step. I'm going to simplify what I have so far. Then I'm going to do my second step, and then I'll simplify once more at the end. So this first step, this vertical stretch by a factor of 2, is not our final answer. It's just kind of like an in-between step. So I'm not going to call that g of x. So my answer needs to be called g. I'm not going to call this one g of x, but I'm going to use an equation to represent like halfway through my work. I'm going to call this one h of x, or halfway. So h of x, the halfway point, is just going to be a vertical stretch by a factor of 2 of f of x. So I ask you, where does a vertical stretch go according to the function? Okay, where does the vertical stretch go according to the function? Outside. So I will write my vertical stretch factor of 2. I'm going to write 2, and then I'm going to multiply that by the f of x function. So you see I didn't actually put the function in yet. I'm saying function notation. I'm taking 2 multiplied by f of x. So this is function notation. This is a separate unit that you learn in pre-calc, but I'm combining it in this unit so that we don't have to do a separate unit of just function notation. So you just write that on your paper because you just went straight to the answer. Take some good notes because we're going to do that in our homework. So this is 2 multiplied by the previous function. Now I'll go ahead and actually do that. What is the previous function? What is f of x? X. So I'm going to do 2 times x. And then I'm going to simplify that, which 2 times x is just 2x. I could probably have skipped all the way to 2x, but I want you to see what my steps. So that's the first part. That's the halfway through. Now we're going to do a translation of 1 unit up, but that translation of 1 unit up is off of the h function. So I'm not going to go back to the f function anymore. I'm going to go from the h function. So g of x is going to be our final answer. I'm going to take the h function and I'm going to add 1 to the outside of that function. Because it's vertical, it's going to go up. So it goes on the outside of that h function. So this is written in symbols. H of x is that previous function, that halfway function. And then you look over here and you say that h of x is 2x. So we'll go ahead and do g. We'll do g of x equals, that's 2x plus 1. So you have your g of x function. So I hope that most of you could have gotten it without this function notation, but that part I'm adding on for you to learn. Okay? So part B, we're going to first figure out where it says followed by, and that'll be like our halfway point. So then that's where I'm going to stop and simplify if needed. So the first part is translation 3 units down. I'll call my first part h of x because it's halfway through. And if we're translating 3 units down, does that go on the inside or the outside of the f of x function? So the outside. So I take my f of x function, whatever that might be, and then I subtract 3. So that's in function notation. Now we go back and say, what is the f of x function? It is x squared. minus 3. And I don't really have anything to simplify there. It's already simplified. So now we're going to look at the second part, which is a vertical strength by factor of 1/3. So my g of x has a vertical shrink. Where does vertical go? On the outside of the function. So we're going to do 1/3, but I'm going to use that from h of x. I'm going to do 1/3 of the h of x function. Because I'm just going back to here, one step. So being 1/3 of that h of x function. So what is my h of x function? X squared minus 3. So you see how I am multiplying 1/3 by the entire function, x squared minus 3. Can I simplify that? Yes. Yeah, we can distribute 1/3. What was this? Distribute 1/3, so we can get rid of the parentheses. And we do 1/3 times 3, which is 1. Question?
Didn't you want the 3 units down?
I did 3 units down.
Yeah, but like for the g of x equals 1/3, but it's in parentheses, so it might be that it would be.
So if we were, I'll draw a picture. I'll try to visualize this for you. But let me just show you one more. If you rewrote this, if you wrote it this way, it's fine. If you also wrote it x third over 3 minus 1, or x squared, I'm sorry, there's no blue on. X squared over 3 minus 1, that would be fine as well. Like either of those. Okay, so what you're saying is, you're kind of confused why it's not 3 there anymore.
Yeah, but now I simplify. No, because once you simplify, it's like you're going down the box.
Oh, yeah, but when you're simplifying, the 3 is not being squared.
Okay.
So the 3 is not part of the function, so it's still vertical out here. But because of the order, it's saying, so here's our parent function. It's saying that we are first going down 3, and then a factor of 1/3, vertical shrink by factor of 1/3, so that's vertically shrinking. So this is going to like go closer to the x-axis, which is what is moving, like it'll end up being more like this. Well, I don't know why it's doing blue. You know, it's going to like shrink it towards the x-axis. That's why. It's a little bit confusing, and that's why I do the separate steps instead of just trying to figure it out right from the beginning. Okay? All right, so C, horizontal shrink by a factor of 1/2, followed by a translation 4 units to the left. So I'm going to do my h of x first. And it says a horizontal shrink. So where's a horizontal transformation go? So inside. So the way I write that is I do f of, and then on the inside, we're going to multiply something by x. Since it's horizontal, I'm not going to multiply 1/2. What am I doing? 2. And then what this means is when you have f of something like that, this means we're going to rewrite the equation, but we're going to replace any x with 2x. So in the equation, wherever I see an x, I'm going to make it 2x. So h of x equals, here's my x right there, absolute value 2x. So I replace x with 2x. That's h of x. And we go over and we make a g of x. And this says followed by a translation 4 units to the left. So it's left, that's horizontal, it's going to go inside of the function. It's going to be h of something. This says translation 4 units to the left. So x plus 4 would go on the inside. And again, we're doing that from the h function, not going back to the beginning. And if we have an x plus 4 in the parenthesis like that, it means replace x with x plus 4. So in this equation, h of x, wherever I see an x, I'm going to make that an x plus 4. So it's going to look like absolute value 2, parenthesis x plus 4, close parenthesis, close your absolute value. You see how I replaced just the x with the x plus 4, but 2 is still there. Can we simplify that?
Yes.
So we have absolute value 2x plus 8 for our final answer. So that would be shrinking it first and then translating 4 to the left, even though it looks like we have an 8 there. But that's because I simplified it. So question D, translation 4 units to the left, followed by a horizontal shrink by a factor of 1/2. I feel like I just had those exact same words in the previous question, did I? But what's different about these two questions? The order. Let's see if it makes the equation the same or if it changes the final equation. Let's see what the order does, if order is important or not. So translation 4 units to the left. I hope I'm talking loud enough. I feel like I'm not talking very loud because I have this cold. 4 units to the left first. So we're going to first start with our h of x. And that's the left, so it goes inside of our f, x plus 4. So I'm going to take my f of x, and wherever I see an x, I replace it with x plus 4. So h of x equals absolute value of x plus 4. So there's the first half. Now we use h of x to find g of x. We now need a horizontal shrink by a factor of 1/2. So I'm now going to do h of 2x. H of 2x. So we're saying wherever there's an x, replace that with 2x. So in my previous equation, in the h, wherever I see an x, I'm going to replace that with 2x. So it's absolute value 2x plus 4. If there was an x, I just made it 2x. But that one did not affect the 4. So you see how we have two different equations. Order does matter. So you need to make sure, that's why I'm trying to organize this. We have to go in order. And we got one more.
So you have to factor it.
Well, if we were going to graph it, we would need to factor it.
Okay.
If we were going to graph it. So this, we don't have to do this for this question, but if you wanted to graph it, then in your table, you'd be multiplying the x's by 1/2, and then you'd also go 2. Because we do multiplication before we do addition. That's why it looks different, but I promise it'll be like the same equation. And I don't think I'm going to ever have you like do graphing with this. I think it's just processing kind of separately. All right, f of x equals 1 over x. We're going to vertical stretch by a factor of 5 and a reflection in the x-axis, followed by translation 3 units right and 4 units down. So we have followed by here, there's actually 2 things happening first and 2 things happening second. We can do it. Our first h of x, what's happening? We have a vertical stretch by a factor of 5 and a reflection in the x-axis. So vertical stretch is going to go on the outside. What's reflection in the x-axis? Is that on the out or the inside? It's also on the outside. If you forget which way is reflection in the x-axis. Vertical. That's what I was looking for. Vertical. Right? We've done this a million times, right? So we will have a negative and a 5 outside of the x-axis. So negative reflects the 5 does the stretch. Negative 5. So now I'm going to apply that to 1 over x. How do I multiply that? Whole number with a fraction. How do I multiply it?
Negative 5 over 1.
Make it into a fraction, and then straight across. Straight across. So we'll have each of x equals, I'm going to put the negative sign out front, and I'll put 5 over x. Because if there's one negative, then the whole thing's negative. Now we'll do our g of x. We'll do function notation first, followed by a translation 3 units right and 4 units down. So 3 units right is going to be on the inside. 4 units down will be on the outside. So I've got those two transformations. Remember, if it's on the inside, that's going to mean replace x with x minus 3. And then the minus 4 on the outside just means put up minus 4 at the end. So g of x equals, we've got negative sign, we've got 5 over. So there's my x. I'm going to replace that with x minus 3. And then on the outside of this thing, subtract 4. Did it. All right, so your assignment is a worksheet which I'm handing out. And we only have one more section left in this chapter, so your test will be coming up soon-ish. But we also have that short week as well, so it won't be, the test won't be next week. We'll probably take a short quiz next week over transformation. All right? When you start to work on this, I might recommend you start with the stuff you feel the least comfortable with. Maybe if it's the equations, maybe start on the back. If it's the graphing, the first 6 questions. Why would I suggest you start with the least comfortable? Woo, that was like energetic answer too. Yeah, I'm not going to be here tomorrow, so you won't be able to come see me next stage. So today is going to be the day you're going to want to ask me questions. Unfortunately,
If we do need to ask questions, is there other pre-calc